If my granddaughter had really stolen from us, why was she living in a motel parking lot, eating crackers out of a paper bag, 6 months pregnant and alone? Why did she look at me like I was the last person on earth she wanted to see? And why, when I reached for her, did she flinch? Those questions kept me up for 3 nights straight, and the answers, when I finally got them, changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. My name is Loretta. I'm 63 years old, retired school teacher, widow of 11 years, and until 8 months ago, I thought I had a pretty good handle on the people I loved. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I have 2 children, my son, Greg, who passed from a heart condition when he was 38, and my daughter, Pamela, who lives 40 minutes away in Hendersonville with her husband, Keith. Greg left behind a daughter named Cora. She was 4 when he died. I helped raise her. Not in a formal way. Cora's mother, Sherry, had custody, but summers at my house, weekends, every Thanksgiving. Cora was mine in all the ways that matter. She called me Grandma Lowe. She used to fall asleep on my couch watching game shows, her feet tucked under the cushions. When Cora turned 19, she started working part-time at the small accounting firm that Keith owned. Pamela had suggested it, said it would be good for her, give her structure, help her save money for community college. Keith agreed. I was glad. I thought it meant Cora would be around more. That was 2 years ago. For a while, everything seemed fine. Then last October, I flew to Phoenix for 3 weeks to visit my college roommate, Norma. Norma had just had a knee replacement and needed help. I cooked, drove her to appointments, sat with her in the evenings watching old movies. It was good for both of us. She needed the company and I needed to be useful. After Greg died and then my husband, I had spent too many years rattling around that house in Asheville by myself. I had been back for exactly 4 days when Pamela called. It was a Tuesday morning. I was still in my bathrobe, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold. She didn't say hello. She said, "Mum, I need you to sit down." I sat. Keith found something. In the books, money has been disappearing from the firm for at least 4 months. Small amounts at first, a few hundred here, a few hundred there. But then bigger. We're talking close to $90,000, Mum, and it all traces back to one person. I already felt something cold moving through me. Who? Cora. The coffee cup was still in my hand. I set it down very carefully on the kitchen table, like if I moved too fast something would break. That's not possible. We have records, Mum. Keith had a forensic accountant come in. The transfers were done from her login, from her computer, her credentials. Pamela, she's gone. She didn't show up to work Monday. She's not at her apartment. Her landlord says she cleared out over the weekend. Mum, she ran. I sat at that table for a long time after I hung up. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Cora was not perfect. She was young. She was sometimes careless. She had made mistakes, but she was not a thief. I knew that child. I had watched her cry at a gas station once because she'd accidentally shorted a cashier 50 cents and didn't notice until she was back in the car. She drove back to fix it, but she was gone, and $90,000 was gone with her. I called her phone 14 times over the next 2 days. It went to voicemail every time. I left messages, calm ones at first, then more desperate. "Cora, honey, whatever happened, whatever's going on, you can talk to me. Please just call me back. I'm not angry. I just need to know you're safe." Nothing. Pamela called again on Thursday. "Keith wants to file a police report. Give me a few more days," I said. "Mum, this is a lot of money. I know what it is. Give me a few more days." I don't know what made me think to call Sherry. Maybe because Sherry was Cora's mother, even if they hadn't been close in years. Maybe because I was running out of people. Sherry picked up on the second ring, which surprised me. I expected voicemail. "I was wondering when you'd call," she said, which surprised me even more. "You know where she is?" A pause. "Not exactly, But I know she reached out to her cousin Marcus, that's my sister's boy, about 2 weeks ago. Asked if he knew any motels near Statesville that took cash. Cheap ones. Another pause. She told him she was in trouble. She didn't say what kind. Statesville was about an hour northeast of Asheville. I wrote down the name of Marcus, got his number from Sherry, and called him before I'd even put down the pen. He was reluctant at first. Said Cora had asked him not to say anything. Marcus, I said, she's my granddaughter. I need to know she's safe. He gave me the name of the motel, the Lakeview Inn on Highway 70. I drove there the next morning. It was early November, overcast, the mountains grey and flat looking through the windshield. I pulled into the motel parking lot just after 9. It was one of those L-shaped places, 2 stories, doors opening straight to the outside. I drove slowly along the front row of cars. I almost missed it. A silver Honda Civic, older model, parked at the far end of the lot. The back seat was piled with clothes. I could see them through the window. A duvet, a cardboard box. She was in the front seat. Her head was tipped back against the headrest. She was asleep. I pulled into the spot next to her and sat for a moment. She was wearing a winter coat over what looked like pajamas. Even from here I could see, even before she shifted and her coat fell open, that she was pregnant. Very pregnant. Very pregnant. 6 months at least, maybe more. I got out of my car. The sound of the door woke her. She looked through the window at me. And her face, I have replayed this moment so many times since. Her face did not do what I expected. She did not look relieved. She did not burst into tears and reach for the door handle. She looked terrified, the way you look at something dangerous. She pressed herself back against the seat. I knocked gently on the window. Cora, honey, it's just me. She shook her head, pressed her hand flat against the glass. I'm not here to yell at you. I'm not here to take you anywhere you don't want to go. I needed to see your face. She didn't move for almost a full minute. Then, slowly, she unlocked the door. She wouldn't look at me at first. She stared at her own hands, folded over her belly. I pulled my coat around me against the cold and leaned against the car, close enough to talk. How long? I asked. 25 weeks, she said. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't used it in days. Are you okay? Are you eating? A short, humorless sound. Kind of. I reached into my bag and handed her the granola bars and the bottle of orange juice I'd brought, because something told me to bring food. She didn't say thank you, but she opened the juice immediately and drank half of it without stopping. Cora, I need you to tell me what happened. She looked at me then. Her eyes were swollen. She had not been sleeping well, maybe for weeks. You won't believe me, she said. Try me. She looked back at her hands. I didn't take that money, Grandma Lowe. The silence that followed was very long. A truck pulled through the lot. Somewhere a door slammed. Then tell me who did. What she told me came out slowly, in pieces. She had to stop several times. At one point she got out of the car and walked a short distance and stood with her back to me before she came back and kept going. 8 months ago, she said, she had noticed something in the firm's accounts. Small discrepancies. She hadn't been sure at first. She was still learning the system, but she ran the numbers twice and the numbers didn't lie. Money was being moved. Not a lot at first, but it was being moved out of client accounts and into a separate account she didn't recognize. She brought it to Keith. She sat across from him in his office. She told me the details like she was making sure I could see it, and she laid out the spreadsheet she had printed. She said he looked at it for a long time without saying anything. Then he looked up at her and said, "Good catch. I'll look into it right away. Don't mention this to anyone yet. We don't want to spook whoever's doing this before we can catch them." She thought she had done the right thing. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. She couldn't explain it exactly. Keith was harder to reach. He reassigned her to data entry, away from the accounts she'd been working on. She told herself it was to protect the investigation. Then she noticed that one of the firm's senior associates, A man named Russell Tate, who had been with the firm for 6 years, had resigned suddenly and quietly. No goodbye lunch. His things cleared out over a weekend. Then Cora started getting headaches and nausea, and she took a test in the bathroom at a CVS on a Wednesday afternoon, and the 2 lines appeared and she sat on the closed toilet lid for 20 minutes, not moving. The father was a young man she'd been seeing for about 4 months. His name was Josh. He was 22, worked at a bike repair shop downtown. They had not been serious, not exactly, and when she told him about the pregnancy, he said he needed time to think and then stopped returning her calls. She waited 3 weeks. He did not come back. She told no one. She was trying to figure out what to do. She was barely sleeping. She was scared, and then, on a Thursday morning in late September, Keith called her into his office. 2 people were with him, a woman in a grey suit she had never seen before, and a man who turned out to be a forensic accountant. They sat her down and told her that a financial review had uncovered a pattern of fraudulent transfers from 5 different client accounts. The transfers had been executed from her login credentials, from her workstation, over a period of 4 months. She said she couldn't breathe. She said she kept hearing the words, and they kept bouncing off her. She said, "I didn't do this." Keith said, and she repeated this to me word for word, "Cora, the evidence is very clear. I think we all want to handle this quietly, without involving law enforcement, and I'm going to need you to seriously consider your options here." She didn't know what that meant. She was 21, alone, 4 months pregnant, and a man she had trusted was sitting across from her telling her that the evidence pointed to her. She did not have a lawyer. She did not know that she could ask for one. She drove home and she sat in her apartment and she thought about calling me. She said she picked up the phone 4 times. She didn't call. "I thought you'd think I did it," she said. We were still in the motel parking lot, both of us leaning against the Civic. My back was getting stiff from the cold. "I thought you love Aunt Pamela, and Keith is her husband. I thought if it came down to my word against theirs, you thought I'd choose them." She didn't answer. That was answer enough. "Cora." I waited until she looked at me. "I drove an hour by myself at 7 in the morning without telling your aunt where I was going. Does that tell you something?" She started crying then, not sobbing, just tears running down her face, silent, like she didn't have the energy for anything louder. I put my arm around her and we stood like that for a while. I told her I believed her. I told her I believed her. I told her we were going to figure it out. I told her I needed a few days. I drove back to Asheville thinking hard. The thing that wouldn't leave me was simple. Cora had come to Keith with evidence of fraud. Shortly after that, Russell Tate, a 6-year associate, resigned without explanation. And then, weeks later, the fraud was attributed to Cora. I called Norma that evening. Norma, before her knee gave out, had worked 30 years as a paralegal in Phoenix. She listened to everything I told her. "She needs a lawyer before anything else," Norma said. "I know, but I need to understand what happened first. If I can find Russell Tate, you think he knows something? I think he left for a reason, and I think the timing matters." Norma had a contact, a private investigator named Dean, who had worked with her firm for years. She called him and explained the situation, and he agreed to take it on for a reduced rate as a favor to her. I was grateful for that. I was working on a teacher's pension and Greg's small life insurance policy, and $90,000 felt like an impossible number to fight. Dean was good. It took him 9 days. He found Russell Tate working at an accounting firm in Charlotte. He did not approach him. Instead, he pulled the public financial records connected to the firm, spent a few days tracing account numbers, and came back to me with something that changed everything. The account the money had been transferred into, the account that was supposed to be Cora's, had been opened 6 weeks after Cora started at the firm. It had her name on it. But the linked email address used to verify the account was not hers. It was a variation, 1 letter different. easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. And that account had been funded with a transfer from a separate business account, one registered to a limited liability company called KMF Consulting LLC. Keith's initials are KMF Dean, also found something else. 3 months before the alleged fraud was discovered, Keith had refinanced the business and taken out a substantial line of credit, roughly $110,000. The business financials didn't support that kind of borrowing. But if money had quietly been moved into a separate account and then rerouted, the gap would be harder to trace. I sat with that information for a long night. The next morning, I called my daughter. I want to be clear about something Pamela did not know. I know some people hearing this story might wonder, but I had known my daughter for 60 years, and I knew what her face did when she was genuinely shocked. And when I told her what Dean had found, when I showed her the account documentation, the LLC registration, the email discrepancy, her face did that thing. She sat at my kitchen table and she went completely white, and then she started shaking. "He told me he had proof," she said. "He showed me reports, I thought." She stopped. She pressed both hands flat on the table. "Oh God, Cora, I know. Where is she? Is she okay? She's safe. I'm going to get her. But first I need you to tell me, do you have access to the firm's records? As a co-owner, do you have standing?" Pamela looked at me. Something was happening behind her eyes, grief shifting into something harder. "Yes," she said, "I have standing." We went together to a family attorney that afternoon, someone Pamela knew from her book club, a woman named Diane who had pivoted from corporate law to family practice and who, it turned out, had the kind of quiet fury in her I was grateful to have in our corner. Diane reviewed everything Dean had found. She made 3 calls. By the following morning, she had filed a formal complaint with the North Carolina State Bar and contacted the Financial Crimes Unit of the County Sheriff's Office. Keith came home from the office the next evening to find Pamela gone. She had taken what she needed and was staying with a friend. He called her cell 17 times. He did not call mine. Law enforcement moved quickly once Diane handed over the documentation. The forensic trail Dean had started was continued by people with subpoena power. Within 2 weeks, they had traced the full scheme. Keith had been systematically routing client funds into the KMF LLC account, then distributing them through a second layer of transfers that he had designed to look like legitimate payroll. He had used Cora's login because she had been the one to discover the original discrepancy, and he knew she would eventually figure out what she had seen. Setting her up was both a cover and a way to neutralize the one person in the office who had noticed something was wrong. Russell Tate, it turned out, had also noticed something. When he confronted Keith about an account irregularity, Keith had simply made things professionally difficult for him until he quit. Russell had not reported it formally. He told the investigators later that he hadn't had enough proof and hadn't been sure he'd be believed. He cooperated fully once the investigation began. Keith was arrested on a Tuesday afternoon at the office. Pamela called me after. Her voice was flat, steady, like she was reciting something she had to hold very carefully. "It's done," she said. "Are you okay?" A long pause. "I will be. Mum, I need to apologize to Cora. I need to do that in person." "I know. I'll talk to her." I drove out to Stateshill the next day with a list of things, 2 bags of groceries, a card from Pamela, the phone number for a family attorney in Charlotte who handled civil matters, and a folder of documentation showing that the charges against Cora had been formally dropped. I also brought Norma's old portable heater, because I was not about to let my pregnant granddaughter spend another night in a cold car. Cora read through the folder slowly, at the small table in the motel room she had finally moved into when I'd given her my credit card. She read it twice, then she set it down and looked at the ceiling. "It's really over," she said. "The criminal piece is. There's still the civil recovery. The firm will try to get as much of the money back as they can from Keith's assets, but your name is clear." She was quiet for a while. "I should have called you sooner," she said. "Yeah," I said. "You should have." She looked at me. "That's it? No big speech? You already know the speech. You sat through 11 years of my speeches. She almost smiled. Not quite, but close. I stayed with her at the motel that night. We ordered pizza. She ate 3 slices, which relieved me more than I would have admitted out loud. We watched a home renovation show she liked. She'd always loved those, even as a little kid, always fascinated by the before and after. We didn't talk about Keith or the firm or Josh or any of it. Not that night. The meeting between Cora and Pamela happened about a week later. At my house, I made coffee and set out cookies and then left them alone in the living room. I went and sat in my bedroom and read the same page of my book 7 times without absorbing a word. When I came back out, they were sitting on the couch, not touching, but close. Pamela had been crying. Cora had too, though she would probably deny it. Pamela looked at me when I came in. "She's willing to let me try," she said. Her voice was careful, like it was something fragile she was carrying. "Good," I said. That was enough for that day. Cora moved back to Asheville in December, into a small apartment 2 miles from mine. I helped her paint the 2nd bedroom. We argued about the colour. She wanted a deep green. I thought it was too dark, and she won. And honestly, it looks beautiful. She started seeing a midwife at the practice her OB referred her to. She enrolled in a paralegal certificate program online, which Norma may have had something to do with. In February, she called me at 6:47 in the morning. "Grandma Lowe," she said, "I think it's time." I was in the car in 12 minutes. I will not say what I was wearing. We made it to the hospital with time to spare. Sherry came, which I had not expected but was glad of. Pamela came. We sat in the waiting room for 4 hours and 40 minutes, and Pamela and I drank bad coffee and didn't talk about Keith, and at some point around hour 3, she put her head on my shoulder and fell asleep for 20 minutes. At 11:14 in the morning, Cora's daughter was born. She weighed 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She had dark hair and the kind of furious, indignant expression of someone who had expected better accommodations. Cora named her June, not after anyone in particular, just because she said she had always liked the sound of it, the beginning of summer. Something warm coming after a long cold stretch. I held June in the hospital room that afternoon while Cora slept. She was so small, so solid and real. I thought about Greg. I thought about how much I wished he could see this. I thought about the version of this year where I believed what I was told and didn't drive to that motel parking lot and lost Cora the way you can lose someone while they're still breathing. Slowly, through distrust, through distance, through choosing the wrong thing to believe. I thought about how close I came to that. There is a photo on my refrigerator now. It's from March. Cora's sitting in that green bedroom, June propped against her knees, both of them looking at the camera with the same expression, squinting a little, skeptical, like they're waiting to see if you're worth their time. I think about that photo when people ask me, and sometimes they do ask, since this is the sort of story that gets told, eventually, how I knew to go looking, to not just accept what I'd been told. I tell them the truth. I didn't know anything. I just knew Cora. And knowing her was enough to make me ask the questions, and asking the questions was enough to find the answers. It usually is. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened. Not just what Keith did, though I think about that too, more than I'd like to admit, but about the chain of choices that led to every single moment of that year, because nothing came out of nowhere. Everything had a root. Keith made a choice when he started moving money. He made another choice when Cora walked into his office with a spreadsheet and laid the evidence right in front of him. And instead of doing the right thing, he looked at a 21-year-old girl and saw a solution to his problem. That tells you everything about a person, not the crime itself, but the calculation. The willingness to look at someone who trusted you and decide that their life is less important than your comfort. But here is the part that stays with me most. Cora made a choice too. She made it 4 times, she told me. She picked up the phone 4 times to call me and put it back down. She had been so sure that love had a limit, that my loyalty to Pamela would outweigh my loyalty to the truth. I understand why she thought that. I do. We teach children, without meaning to, that love comes with conditions, that belonging to a family means deferring to it. She had learned somewhere along the way that being the outsider, the one who came in later, who didn't share the blood, meant she had less standing to be believed. That is the thing I wish I could go back and correct. Not the drive to Statesville, not the investigation, not any of the practical things. I wish I could go back to every ordinary Tuesday when Cora was 12 or 15 or 17 and make sure she knew in a way that actually landed that my belief in her was not contingent on anyone else's opinion of her, that she did not have to earn her place in this family over and over again. I couldn't fix that. What I could do was show up, and that is what I did. There is something that happens when you choose honesty over comfort, when you decide to ask the hard question instead of accepting the easy answer. And it is this: the truth tends to hold. It has weight. It does not shift or crumble when you press on it. The lie Keith built was elaborate, but it was built on the assumption that no one would press, that Cora would be too scared, that Pamela would be too trusting, that I would be too far away and too old and too inclined to defer to the person with the title and the corner office. He miscalculated. And Cora, who sat in that parking lot eating crackers and refusing to call for help, because she was trying to protect people who had already stopped protecting her. Cora built something real out of the hardest year of her life. She did not collapse. She did not run further. She stayed close enough to be found. That is its own kind of courage, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't announce itself. June is 4 months old now. She is loud and opinionated and absolutely certain that the world exists for her entertainment. She is right. I look at her and I think about what almost wasn't the version of events where I stayed home, where I believed what I was told, where Cora disappeared into that parking lot and we lost her slowly, quietly, in the way that people can be lost without anyone noticing until it's too late. I am grateful every single day that I drove that hour. I am grateful I asked the questions. I am grateful that somewhere in Cora, underneath all the fear and the exhaustion, there was still enough trust left to unlock that car door. That is what I want to carry forward. Not the anger at Keith, not the grief of that year, the unlocked door, the willingness, even when it is terrifying, to let someone in.